What's going on, everyone? I'm Hunter Doyle here from Philly Insider Podcast. Welcome back to another trade target video. Today we've got Brad Keller from the Kansas City Royals, a guy who Troy H., another guy he suggested to us, one of our loyal subscribers, as I always say. First off, he's 26 years old. He's going to turn 27 on July 27th, actually the day before my birthday, so we almost share a birthday. He's making $4.8 million this year. Arbitration year 3 is next year, and then he is an unrestricted free agent in 2024. And this year, he has pitched 97 2/3. He's 5-9. Part of that record's obviously due to the fact that the Royals are not a very good baseball team. Take that with a grain of salt, but he has a 3.96 ERA, 1.27 WHIP, 67 strikeouts, 4.21 FIP, and a 1.4 WAR. Just wanted to lay out the numbers. I realized I hadn't been doing that for some of the players I'd done videos on. 9 of his 17 starts this year have been quality starts. That is 26th in Major League Baseball, and one of which was last night versus the Tigers. He pitched 7 innings, 3 hits, 1 walk, 1 earned run, and 8 strikeouts. A really nice job of potentially upping his trade value as this trade deadline quickly approaches. Let me just say right off the bat, I'm not sure if he will end up getting traded. The Royals could absolutely decide that the return they might get isn't worth it, and they'd rather just keep him around for next year. But I could also see them saying, look, this is our window to get some value out of him. Let's do it while we can. Off of the quality starts, 9 of 17. In 11 of his 17 starts, he's gone 6 innings or more. He's also averaging 15.45 pitches per inning, really not running up that pitch count. He's going to go deep into baseball games and give you quality starts for the most part. Even if it's not by definition a quality start, he's going to be able to probably give you 5 or more innings on a nightly basis. He's only had 4 starts where he's gone under 5 innings, and in some of those, he's been able to go 4 2/3, which on your bad starts, if you're able to go 4 2/3, that's nice to have someone who can battle through those rough innings. And that's what I want to get to next. Looking at some of his poor outings this year, let me start off by saying, yes, there are some poor outings that you just can't look beyond and say, well, he had this one positive outcome of this poor outing. No, there was that 1 2/3 outing he had against Baltimore that was just atrocious, and you can't make an excuse for that. That was, I believe that was in early June, so not too long ago. And you know what? That happens sometimes. Sometimes you have Kyle Gibson who gives up 4 home runs in a row in the first inning. Looking at his poor outings, May 10th versus Texas, he had that 3-run first inning. That did not end up being a good start. He would go on to give up a couple more runs in that outing. I believe he gave up 6. 5 of them were earned. But my point being with that is he did have some innings where he was able to string together quick innings and just get out of there. Just continue to build upon those innings and at least get to the 4th or 5th inning, right? And in May 27th versus Minnesota, he had a 4-run first inning. Again, didn't end up being a good outing. He would go on to give up a couple more runs, but just to be able to have a couple innings in there and battle through that, I think is huge because you need guys. Remember Michael Lorenzen earlier in June versus us. I think he had a 5-run first inning, and then he had 4 scoreless after that. To have a guy who's capable of that and who's able to just string together a couple good innings here and there and battle through the tough parts of the game, that's huge because even if it doesn't end up being a good outing, you need guys who can just save your bullpen, and even if it's 4 2/3, that's better than 1 2/3. And on a more positive note, looking at 2 starts where he really did do that versus the 2 previous starts I just mentioned, July 6th versus Houston. This is the big one. This was right before last night's starts. This was one of his most recent starts. He goes 5 2/3. Yes, he does give up 5 runs, but he's able to battle and turn it into a somewhat salvageable start. April 22nd versus Seattle. He has a 4-run 4th inning, but outside of that, he did not have any trouble in that game. That is really huge to me, is having guys who maybe aren't the most electric on the mound or maybe have their struggles, is being able to just kind of battle. And battle, I've said it probably 1,000 times, probably getting sick of hearing it, but I do that repetition to hammer this point home. And look at those teams I mentioned. I mean, Seattle, Minnesota, Houston, Texas. Minnesota and Houston, obviously the better of those two in terms of offense. And Texas and Seattle, they don't have, as dominant of lineups, but they definitely are respectable lineups. The reason he's had some of those poor outings is because he does tend to put too many runners on base. But at the same time, he's proven that he can get himself out of those jams. He has a 52.4% ground ball percentage and also a 43% top percentage. So the ground ball percentage is 8th among qualified pitchers. The top percentage is 3rd among qualified pitchers. And he really does this with his slider and his sinker. Primarily his slider. He gets 38.3 inches of drop on it, 4.5 inches above the average. And his sinker does get some good drop on it too. We'll talk about his sinker in a little bit. But really, I think he does a nice job just mixing those pitches. His fastball gets around 94. Sliders around 86, 87. His sinker is 93. Fastball slider is really, what you're going to get from him for the most part. Those are the two pitches that are going to work well off of each other. His sinker is kind of his secondary pitch. Mixes in an occasional changeup, rarely a splitter, but for the most part, you're going to see fastball slider, and he does a nice job at changing the eye level. He elevates that fastball for the third strike sometimes, but also will get you fishing with that slider low in the zone. And he can also locate his fastball very well low in the zone, which makes it difficult when you have that same release from the fastball and slider, and you get that last second break from the slider, and you don't know how to react. Before you know it, you're heading back to the dugout. It just makes it really tricky with two strikes when you have that fastball and slider as a threat low in the zone. One of the downfalls I will say is if he isn't quite able to hit his spots with his fastball, when it is low in the zone, you want to be able to take advantage of that mistake. So that's why I think it makes it tricky, because he will give you fastballs to hit sometimes, and that is, like I said, that's one of the cons of his game, is that he doesn't quite have that electric stuff. So he has to attack hitters and force them to put the ball in play. He doesn't want to work around them, because then it's going to limit the amount of innings he can throw, obviously. You give guys baseballs to hit, sometimes there will be bad results if you're a guy who's going to pitch to contact. That's just the reality of it. So he's not going to blow the fastball by hitters. They're going to take him deep from time to time. Sometimes the fastball just doesn't get low enough or doesn't hit the corners, right? It just hits the heart of the plate. Sometimes he doesn't elevate it enough when he's trying to get that high fastball, or sometimes the slider just hangs a little bit. It can be a mix, but it's primarily his sinker that gets hit around. He uses it a good bit. He doesn't not use it. I think it's around 24% of the time, if I'm not mistaken. But it's definitely not a great track record with the sinker. So it does have some good vertical dip to it. It's not quite as sharp, but that's the problem, is that when it's not quite as sharp, it can move right into the heart of the plate, and it can be easy for hitters to pick up. And hitters are hitting .345 against it and slugging .517 versus the sinker. So since 2019, hitters have hit .290 or above against the sinker. Like I said, it's a track record. It's not just this year. So that's something to watch, is his sinker does get hit around, but I'm glad he doesn't use it as often, which is why he's able to have success. But you just need that sinker and that changeup to mix things up every here and now. Overall, guys, look at the quality starts. Look at how many innings he's able to go. He gives you quality innings, and he's had a lot of success when he's going back to doing what he does best. Royals Review did a really good article talking about last year he tried to be a strikeout pitcher. I don't know if that's what he was trying to do, but his strikeouts increased. Overall results were awful. This year he's going back to being more of a ground ball pitcher, and it's been much, much better results. I think this would be a good pickup for us. I think you'd have to give up a decent haul just because he's younger and he's under control. The Royals are going to want young players. They're looking to contend sooner rather than later. I think they thought they were going to be a little better this year. Royals Review also brought up the case of Kevin Gausman, who wasn't the guy he is now. Back then was kind of a similar trade target to Brad Keller. Garnered a pretty decent haul of prospects. So I don't think we're going to give up top 5. Hopefully not. But I do think we'll have to give up, probably a top 10 guy, as Royals Review mentioned in his article. Probably some other guys who we might not want to give up, but it depends. I think this is a guy who might be worth the cost versus like a Jose Quintana. I think he's going to kind of regress back to the mean, and by that I mean just his track record over the past few years. He is pitching really, really well, so I'm not opposed to it, and he's also cheap. He's a rental. But I think Brad Keller, you kind of get, you know a little bit more of what you're getting, and you're going to get 6 to 7 innings more often than not. Versus Quintana, you're probably getting around 5, maybe sometimes 4 1/3, 4 2/3. It's just a little iffy with him. But I will say he hasn't got hit around quite as much as Brad, but I personally like Brad a little bit more. It's just you're going to have to give up more to get him. So it's just kind of pick your poison here. I wouldn't be surprised if the Phillies picked up a couple starters maybe, depending on what the injury situation is. But yeah, this would make a lot of sense to me, and I'm not opposed to it. I say that a lot, that I'm not opposed to it, but I actually do really like Brad Keller. So I would say I'm on board with this, depending on what the haul is. So, Troy, thank you for the suggestion. Thank you all for watching. This is a little bit of a longer one. I wanted to go more in depth on him because I really thought he was an interesting candidate. And, yeah, God bless y'all. We'll see y'all later. Go Phils. Hopefully better results against the Blue Jays tonight. We'll see y'all.